Everybody, and welcome back to more political chatter. In this video, we will be talking about Senator Tim Scott and how he, last night, shockingly announced that he will drop out of the 2024 presidential primary. Tim Scott is a senator from South Carolina, and he announced back in the summer of this year that he would run for president. He was, obviously as a senator, he was seen as a top tier contender, right? I mean, not really getting anywhere near Trump in polls, but he, of course, was still considered a major candidate, obviously. But last night, he announced that he would suspend his 2024 campaign, coming as a big surprise to many people, involved with American politics. It's no surprise that Tim Scott, his momentum definitely sunk, lately. He was doing well, kind of, nationally during the, some months ago, but especially in Iowa. Tim Scott, with his faith-based campaign, he was running on a good performance in Iowa. He was running for those, Christian faith-based caucus goers in Iowa. And he was doing good. I have it up here, actually. At the peak of his entire presidential campaign, he was at 10.5% in Iowa, and that is really what he was betting big on. But, as you go down and down and down, with Nikki Haley rising in Iowa and Tim Scott not only falling in Iowa, but he was also betting big in South Carolina. But he was once at 14, 12, 10, 14 consistently. And then most recently, CNN had him at just 6. So when you look at those polls, it's definitely not looking good for your campaign. And this was definitely, this withdrawal definitely came out of impulse. I mean, sure, you have these terrible polling numbers, but there's still always hope in presidential campaigns. That's what candidates believe, at least. But looking at Tim Scott, it looks like he just came up with this idea to drop out really out of nowhere. Seems like it was entirely his idea. Doesn't look like his donors were telling him to. Doesn't look like his staff members were telling him to, because, his staff members and major donors have come out and said that they were shocked when Tim Scott withdrew from the race. There was no prior notice to this. Apparently, only 2 of his top-ranked staff members knew that he would drop out. No one else. So, definitely seems like Tim Scott himself was looking at these numbers and saying, why even go on with this? Why not, let my support consolidate around someone else like Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or someone else who has a better chance of winning. So a very interesting withdrawal from the race coming from Tim Scott. But again, I mean, it only makes sense, really. There wasn't really any hope for him nationally in polls. Iowa, there was no hope. New Hampshire, absolutely none. He was doing abysmal there. And even his home state of South Carolina. He was telling donors earlier, in the campaign to just, quote, wait until South Carolina. But, you don't want to keep going on this trend of just going down this downward spiral in your home state, because clearly Nikki Haley has all the momentum among the group that both of them are trying to pull votes from. I mean, Haley, DeSantis, and Scott alike, they're all polling from the donor base, more traditional conservative Republicans, more so like Romney Republicans, right? But with 3 candidates, becomes very, very divided. But looking at Iowa, looking at South Carolina, that voter class is definitely, Nikki Haley is definitely pulling away with them. I mean, she is at 18% in South Carolina when Tim Scott is only at 8%. In Iowa, Nikki Haley has almost surpassed Ron DeSantis. It looks like it'll happen pretty soon. She's at 14. DeSantis is at 17. Tim Scott at only 7. So when, you look at those numbers, Nikki Haley will continue making these debates. Tim Scott will not. And, Nikki Haley is only rising. That's my point. Nikki Haley has the momentum, and his support will continue to be pulled by Nikki Haley, Tim Scott's support. So it makes sense, of course, obviously, it makes sense for a lot of these candidates to drop out, honestly. But Tim Scott actually did it. But this, I think, definitely opens the door to us actually having a competitive primary. Like that meme with the dominoes, like the small domino with the little label leading to the big domino with the big label. I think that this early withdrawal from Tim Scott can actually result in a seriously competitive primary between Donald Trump and Nikki Haley, nationwide, because looking at Iowa, Nikki Haley probably comes in second. Looking at New Hampshire, I don't have the polls up right now, but New Hampshire, Haley is in second. Her average, she is in second. And DeSantis is sometimes even behind Chris Christie, and earlier this year was behind Vivek Ramaswamy a couple times in New Hampshire. So I think I have DeSantis dropping out after New Hampshire. So for serious contenders, that leaves Trump and DeSantis. I think that Haley performs very well in New Hampshire, possibly coming close to Trump. So looking at South Carolina, the third state, her home state, if you have Ron DeSantis out, Tim Scott out, Chris Christie definitely out because he's not winning New Hampshire, and he said he'll drop out after New Hampshire. Most of Mike Pence's support, if not all, going to all of these guys' support will go to Nikki Haley besides Vivek Ramaswamy. When you have Haley right now at 20, plus, or 18, or 19, I guess, plus DeSantis at 10, that's 29, plus Tim Scott at 8, you're already at 37. Then you got Christie at 3, that's 40%. Then you got Pence at 3, so that's 43% to Trump's 49. You're coming pretty darn close. And if Haley can, through these debates, chip away at Trump's numbers, if she takes more of an anti-Trump stance, actually convinces some Trump supporters to not support Trump, if she continues to chip away at that Trump number, South Carolina could go to Nikki Haley. If she doesn't win it, it's over, right? Even if she comes close, I guess she can hope for a good result on Super Tuesday, maybe win a state, but really for a serious competitive primary, following South Carolina on Super Tuesday, she has to win South Carolina. But with Tim Scott out now, and basically all of his support going in South Carolina, at least almost all of his 8% going to Nikki Haley, in polls she will be sure to receive a boost from this. I don't think really that many, if not any, Tim Scott supporters will switch to Ron DeSantis. His campaign is falling dramatically. Look, he was at 28 once in South Carolina. Today, he is only at 10. Why would any Tim Scott supporters switch to DeSantis? I do not know. They're going to go to Nikki Haley because she has the momentum. So Nikki Haley will definitely see a rise. It won't affect anything nationally, right? Because Tim Scott is at 2 or 3% nationwide. But when you look at South Carolina, I think that South Carolina will be it has proved to be the most consequential state, right, in primaries, because Super Tuesday comes right after. New Hampshire is affected by Iowa. South Carolina is affected by New Hampshire. But all of these Super Tuesday states are completely affected by South Carolina, right? And Nikki Haley is the state's former governor. She is so popular. She has that momentum. So, Tim Scott out. If Nikki Haley is on the rise in New Hampshire in polls, adds more fuel to her campaign, she really could potentially win South Carolina, which would be huge, which would actually make this primary competitive. So, Tim Scott dropping out, definitely very interesting, more interesting than people are thinking, in my opinion, right now. But I'm excited to see where this goes. But now there is actually a shot of South Carolina not going to Donald Trump and maybe Super Tuesday, being competitive, because that voting block, Haley, DeSantis, Scott, was split between all them three before. But Tim Scott not waiting until South Carolina is huge. Now, already most of his support will go to Haley, but between Haley and DeSantis will probably be out by South Carolina, right? So all of that support will be with Nikki Haley at one point or another. But Tim Scott not waiting until South Carolina, because remember, he was telling his donors, wait until South Carolina, but he's not doing that. So that vote will not be split, and Haley has that donor class now. Thank you all for watching this video. I really hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all later.